Right now, in Los Angeles, there is a computer algorithm that is holding traffic light green for just an extra 4 seconds.
Just 4 seconds, yeah.
Right, which sounds like nothing. But that tiny adjustment is saving a few dozen idling cars from burning fuel.
Exactly.
And if you multiply that 4-second decision by, thousands of intersections across a huge metropolis, you have this invisible AI quietly erasing up to 15% of a city's vehicular emissions.
It's massive.
It really is. You don't see it happening, but the city is like actively watching the flow of its arteries. It's studying energy grids at night and predicting exactly where its population is going to shift 10 years from now.
Which totally sounds like science fiction, I know.
Completely.
Yeah.
But based on the stack of research we're looking at today, specifically this really comprehensive paper called The Role of AI in Smart Cities, Urban Planning and Traffic Management, it is happening right now.
That's already here, yeah.
So our mission for this deep dive is to cut right through all the dense tech jargon and figure out how our physical world is being fundamentally rewired.
Right, because this is about your morning commute, your power bills, the actual neighborhood you live in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So whether you're a hardcore tech enthusiast or just someone who is, completely exhausted from sitting in rush hour traffic, this shift is going to dictate how you experience your city in the very near future.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly is the driving force pushing municipalities to just hand over the keys to these algorithms?
Well, you really have to look at the immense baseline pressures that cities are buckling under right now. I mean, we're tracking rapidly growing urban populations that are just colliding with stagnant physical footprints.
The cities aren't getting any bigger physically.
Right, they can't. So the roads are catastrophically clogged, and municipal energy costs are just climbing at this unsustainable rate.
And traditional planning just can't handle it.
Right, not at all. Manual urban planning, where a committee spends like 3 years studying a single intersection or a zoning proposal, it simply cannot keep up with the sheer scale and the dynamic speed of modern urban life.
It's just too slow.
Way too slow. So that is the vacuum that AI is filling. It processes almost incomprehensible volumes of data to connect physical infrastructure, municipal services, and moving populations in real time.
Wow. So, building the city on a screen is really the first step here. Before a city can be smart about how you and I move around within it, it has to be smart about how it's actually built.
Precisely.
And looking at the research, the shift from manual urban planning to predictive AI modeling is just profound. Like, historically, urban planners relied on really fragmented, often outdated information.
Yeah, a census from 5 years ago, stuff like that.
Right. But today, these AI models are ingesting live satellite imagery, cross-referencing that with real-time cellular ping data to track commutes, and layering on school enrollments, housing prices, all of it.
And the mechanism there is what's really crucial. The AI can look at, say, the density of nighttime lights from a satellite, correlate it with morning cellular traffic, and identify these hidden population booms or infrastructural strains years before an official census would ever catch it.
That's incredible. So what used to take years of manual study is happening in, hours.
Literally hours. And that processing speed fundamentally alters the economics of urban development.
How so?
Well, Singapore is a prime case study in the materials we reviewed. They aren't waiting for a subway line to become overcrowded before proposing an expansion.
You're getting ahead of it.
Right. They use AI-driven digital twins, which is essentially a highly detailed virtual replica of the whole city, to run agent-based simulations.
Okay, wait, what does that mean practically?
It means they feed in decades of transit data, overlay it with proposed commercial zones, and simulate millions of virtual citizens moving through the infrastructure. They load test the physical city before a single shovel hits the dirt.
Oh, wow. It's essentially playing SimCity, but with real human lives and billions of municipal dollars on the line.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Being able to test massive, complex scenarios on a screen completely eliminates the need to learn from incredibly expensive mistakes poured in concrete.
Exactly, and connecting that simulation capability to the bigger economic picture reveals some staggering implications.
Like what?
Well, better predictive planning directly reduces the likelihood of underserved neighborhoods and catastrophic infrastructural failures. If a city overbuilds commercial real estate in the wrong area, or fails to build adequate water systems in a booming residential sector, those financial penalties stretch for generations.
Yeah, the taxpayers end up paying for that forever.
Right. And the sources highlight IBM's work in this specific area. They're deploying AI to help cities process thousands of discrete data variables simultaneously.
Thousands.
Yeah, we're talking about soil density, historical flood patterns, localized economic growth rates, material costs. Manual analysis just collapses under the weight of that many variables, but the AI synthesizes it to support highly optimized zoning and land use decisions.
Okay, I have to challenge the optimism of that premise, though,
Go for it.
because AI is at its core a pattern recognition machine, right?
Right.
It looks at historical data to predict future efficiency. But historically, our past urban planning has been incredibly flawed.
Very true.
So if a city has a documented history of discriminatory zoning or redlining or chronically underfunding specific transit corridors, feeding that historical data into a predictive algorithm seems like a guaranteed way to automate and accelerate those exact same bad practices.
You're isolating the primary tension running through the entire smart city movement right there.
Yeah.
The research explicitly warns about this. An AI planning tool is only as reliable as the data it consumes. Biased historical data absolutely risks locking in past inequities under this guise of algorithmic objectivity.
Because the computer says it's right, people just believe it.
Exactly. The algorithm does not inherently understand the concept of equity. It only optimizes for efficiency based on the parameters of the past. So if the past was inequitable, the automated future will be too.
So the raw pursuit of efficiency can actively undermine fairness.
Which means the human element cannot be engineered out of the process. Urban planners, sociologists, they have to stay in the loop to audit these algorithms, balancing data-driven efficiency with equitable outcomes.
A city can't just outsource its civil responsibilities to a server rack.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so assuming a city navigates that data bias and gets the blueprint right, the next immediate friction point is moving millions of physical bodies through that optimized grid every single day.
Yes, the daily commute.
Right. And we've relied on static time traffic systems for decades, which is a massive liability when traffic patterns are completely dynamic. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The shift to AI-driven camera feeds means the grid is no longer blind. These systems utilize computer vision algorithms to actively classify what is on the road.
So it knows if it's looking at a bus versus a bike?
Exactly. It distinguishes between a bus, a passenger car, a bicycle, calculates their approach speeds, and adjusts the signal phasing dynamically to maintain a continuous green wave across major arterial corridors.
What's fascinating here is the sheer scale at which this is already operating. Los Angeles has been pioneering a system called ATSC, which stands for Automated Traffic Surveillance and Control, and it essentially centralizes this dynamic feedback loop across thousands of intersections.
That's huge.
Yeah. And when you look at the mobility data from companies like INRX, the results are definitive. Cities deploying these adaptive signal systems have documented reductions in travel times by up to 25%.
Wait, really? A 25% reduction is massive.
It's life-changing for commuters.
I mean, if your daily commute is an hour, that adaptive system is giving you back 50 minutes of your life every single morning and evening.
Yep.
And the transit data from the sources shows public transportation is utilizing the exact same predictive models.
Oh, absolutely.
The AI ingests local event calendars, weather changes, and real-time traffic delays to predict a spike in ridership at a specific rail station.
So it adjusts schedules before the crowd even gets there.
Right. Dispatching extra train cars before the platform gets crowded. It completely eliminates the blind guesswork of running empty buses on a fixed loop.
And the downstream effects of that optimization go far beyond just commuter convenience. It's actually a vital component of the broader climate strategy.
Because of the emissions.
Exactly. The physical mechanics of traffic dictate that fewer stopped cars result in fewer idling engines, and less idling creates an immediate, localized reduction in emissions.
Makes perfect sense.
The McKinsey Global Institute data in our sources estimates that this kind of AI traffic optimization can reduce urban vehicle emissions by up to 15% in dense metropolitan areas.
Erasing 15% of emissions just by upgrading the software and sensors at intersections is a massive lever for meeting climate goals.
It really is.
But looking at the hardware required, the HD cameras, the localized data processing, the cloud infrastructure, it begs the question of who is actually paying for this. It seems like this incredibly advanced, sensor-heavy setup is exclusively built for massive, capital-rich cities like LA or Singapore. But struggling municipalities surely lack the tax base to install continuous sensor networks.
The technological divide is a harsh reality of the smart city transition, no doubt about it. The underlying technology is proven, but capital access is heavily skewed.
So the rich cities get faster, cleaner commutes.
Yeah, smaller or lower income municipalities often lack the initial funding for the physical hardware, let alone the complex data pipelines and cybersecurity infrastructure required to maintain it.
Wow.
And the sources point out that this risks widening the gap between affluent and struggling cities, where the technological divide manifests as a literal physical divide in how safely and efficiently a citizen can move through their day.
That's a sobering thought. But moving on, moving all those cars efficiently, especially as internal combustion engines are replaced by electric vehicles, creates a massive secondary problem.
The power draw.
Right. You suddenly have millions of optimized vehicles pulling electricity from the grid. If the grid isn't as dynamic as the roads, the whole system just collapses under the power draw.
Yep.
That brings us to the third pillar of the research, energy efficiency, which is really the invisible lifeblood of the smart city.
The energy grid is arguably the most critical and fragile component here. The sources outline how AI functions essentially as a master thermostat for the metropolis.
Like a smart thermostat in your house, but for the whole city.
Exactly. We're looking at smart grids capable of balancing electricity loads in real time. If residential solar panels in one neighborhood are overproducing on a sunny afternoon, the AI routes that surplus power to an industrial sector facing high demand.
It just shifts the power to where it's needed instantly.
Right. And during a severe heat wave, the AI can selectively signal specific, non-critical municipal systems to throttle back their power consumption to prevent rolling blackouts.
And the efficiency gains at that scale are highly measurable. Siemens provided data for this research indicating that AI-managed grids can reduce electrical transmission losses by up to 10% annually.
10% is huge on a municipal scale.
It's a colossal amount of generated energy that is no longer bleeding out of the system, and it extends past the grid right into the commercial buildings.
Yeah, the invisible waste.
Exactly. The text introduces this concept of invisible waste. Heating or cooling a massive commercial office floor for 3 hours when no one is even there is a massive drain.
It's terrible for the grid.
But the AI eliminates that by syncing a building's HVAC and lighting infrastructure directly with localized weather forecasts and actual human occupancy sensors.
Amsterdam provides an excellent case study for this localized resource management. They've integrated AI tools to track energy consumption patterns down to the specific neighborhood level.
How did that work?
Well, instead of just reacting to dashboard warnings, the AI predicts a localized energy shortfall hours before it happens. It can pre-cool well-insulated commercial buildings during off-peak hours when renewable energy is cheap and abundant.
Oh, essentially using the buildings themselves as thermal batteries.
Yes. And then it reduces their power draw during peak demand hours. It is actively flattening the demand curve.
That's brilliant. It's treating the entire city's energy consumption as a fluid, proactive system rather than a reactive utility.
Which is an absolute necessity when transitioning to renewable energy, because the core infrastructural difficulty with wind and solar power is their intermittency.
Right, the wind doesn't always blow.
They generate power on nature's schedule, which rarely aligns perfectly with human demand. Peak solar generation happens at noon, but peak energy demand usually hits at 6 p.m. when the population returns home.
So there's mismatch.
A huge one. AI serves as the critical bridge here. It utilizes advanced forecasting to predict renewable output days in advance and coordinates massive grid-scale battery storage to ensure clean energy is captured and released precisely when the city needs it.
Wow.
It is the mechanism that makes intermittent clean energy economically viable at a metropolitan scale.
Okay, we've covered the undeniable magic of a city that simulates its own growth, clears its own traffic jams, and balances its own power grid. But optimizing a city to this degree requires an immense amount of data collection and processing power.
And magic always comes with a cost.
It does. This brings us to the trade-offs, and what the research terms the big AI paradox. So what does this all mean?
Well, it means municipalities have to engage in some very honest, complex accounting. The energy paradox is the most immediate physical cost. Running these sophisticated machine learning models requires staggering amounts of computing power.
Right.
You need colossal data centers to process the municipal data, and those data centers consume massive amounts of electricity and water for cooling.
So wait, cities are burning massive amounts of carbon-heavy energy to power the massive server farms that are running the algorithms designed to help them reduce carbon.
That is the exact paradox. Municipalities have to mathematically prove that the carbon emissions they save through traffic and grid optimization significantly outweigh the carbon they spend running the data centers.
That's a tricky balance to strike.
It is. And beyond the environmental paradox, there is the human cost regarding data collection.
This is where the trade-off becomes really visceral. I mean, it's one thing to know your phone tracks your location. It's another to realize your city's physical infrastructure knows exactly what time you leave your apartment.
Exactly.
It knows which coffee shop you route past, what your vehicle looks like, and when your smart meter shows your home is empty.
As a citizen, you are essentially trading a layer of personal anonymity for 15 minutes of your life back and a stabilized power grid.
This raises an important question, and it is the loudest, most persistent concern surrounding the smart city framework.
Right. The sensors required to make these systems work collect deeply intimate data about human behavior and movement. While that data is used to optimize services, the potential for surveillance overreach or data misuse is profound.
And as the outline points out, if the data is flawed, it's not just an engineering glitch.
No, not at all.
If a machine learning model controlling the traffic grid is trained on flawed demographic data, and it starts consistently routing heavy polluting commercial traffic through lower-income neighborhoods in order to keep the streets clear in wealthy commercial districts,
Which happens.
that is a catastrophic failure. It stops being a tech issue and becomes a profound civil rights issue.
It is entirely a civil rights issue. The algorithm is simply solving for flow, completely unaware of the socioeconomic damage it is causing to a specific community.
Because it's just looking at numbers.
Right. That is why the researchers in the source material argue that accountability frameworks are just as critical as the hardware. You cannot deploy a smart city without transparent data policies, incredibly strong legal protections regarding data retention, and clear public governance.
The public has to be involved.
Citizens must know what behavioral data is being collected, how long it's stored, and exactly how the algorithms are prioritizing services. The technology cannot be allowed to outpace the civic governance.
Okay, distilling all of this down, AI is undeniably a powerful tool for civic management. It provides the analytical power to build predictive infrastructure that avoids the costly mistakes of the past. It optimizes our daily transit so we aren't wasting hours of our lives burning fuel in gridlock.
Yeah.
And it balances our energy grids so intermittent renewables can actually support a modern metropolis. But it only functions safely if we govern the data ethically and protect the populations living inside the grid. So the next time you are sitting completely alone at a red light at 2 in the morning, frustrated, waiting for a blind mechanical timer to tick down, you will know exactly why that intersection is an infrastructural relic begging for an upgrade.
And as we look toward the immediate horizon, there is one final concept from the future prospects section of the research that completely shifts the paradigm we've been discussing. Well, up until now, we've talked about AI as a highly centralized system. Sensors collect data, send it back to a massive municipal server farm, the server processes it, and a command is sent back to the street.
Right, a huge loop.
But the impending combination of edge AI and 5G networks is going to decentralize that entire process. The intelligence is going to be pushed right to the edge of the physical network.
Wait, so instead of a traffic camera capturing video, compressing it, and sending every single frame back to a central cloud server, which obviously takes massive bandwidth and time, the stoplight itself has a microchip processing the data right there on the physical street.
Precisely. The traffic light hanging above your car won't just be a dumb sensor waiting for instructions. It will be an autonomous computational node.
Wow.
It will process the video feed, recognize the traffic patterns, and make split-second optimization decisions entirely on its own, communicating instantly with the intersection a block away via 5G.
That is wild.
The city won't just be managed by a distant, centralized AI. Its very edges, every street lamp, every crosswalk, every power meter will be computationally alive.
Physical environment that isn't just watching you move, but actively thinking and adapting for itself on every single corner. We really are watching the blueprint of the future being drawn right in front of us,